Thank you, Joshua. My Bishop, Okinde, hello, Bishop. Everyone in the room, Hesabika, thank you so much for trusting me with the pulpit. I want to, see, because of time, I only have 8 minutes. So there are some things that I will ask you to take judicial notice of, as we say in the courts. Please take judicial notice of the story of Solomon and the King Solomon and the two mothers who came to claim the baby as their own, and what the king said about it. I'll come back to that as I end my reflection this morning. But I think one thing that we can agree on as Kenyans today, Joshua, which you missed out, is that we are in a crisis. Do we agree on that? Yes. We are in a crisis. We may not agree about the nature of the crisis or the cause of the crisis, but we understand that we are currently in a crisis. But this may come as news to us, but the crisis we are in did not begin on 8th of August. Italian writer, political writer and theorist, Antonio Gramsci, or however you pronounce it, once said that the crisis we are currently enduring, he was referring to another context, but it applies to ours, that the crisis we are currently enduring comprises of the fact that the old is dying, but the new cannot yet be born. And in this interregnum, there arises a vast diversity of morbid symptoms, end of quote. The old is dying, but the new cannot yet be born. In this interregnum, the period between the old and the new, there arises a vast diversity of morbid symptoms. And so I will talk about, my reflections will be divided into those stages. The old, the interregnum, the new, and then I'll end by saying the picture of now. So what is the old? I think, and I think, Pete has said that you have to go and get audited accounts for 3 years. I think it's another way of saying we must know where we're coming from in order to know where we're going. So where are we coming from as Kenyans? What is Kenya? A lot of us think it's a country, it's a nation, and so on. I disagree. Kenya is a market run by a company struggling to become a nation, governed by a free people. From 1885, Kenya was run by a company called the Imperial British East Africa Company. So it was a market, and it was actually a market for selling and buying goods. It was a slave market where we, the black people, were transformed into cheap labor by being forced to pay hard tax so that we could go and work for the Mzungu in order for us to be their slaves in their extraction project. But then we've come a long way since. We moved from that slave market through colonialism to neo-colonialism to one-party dictatorship. And where are we now? I want to leave that a question mark. Where are we in that continuum? But in that discussion, we have to think about our role as citizens. Forget the elite, the rulers, whoever, whatever they call themselves, whether they're black or white or brown. But in that continuum, there is a distinction between we as subjects and we as citizens. And a lot of us struggle to become citizens because we are so used to being subjects, to being ruled. A lot of people have complained and said, oh, this constitution is bad. The president says, what do you want me to do? You have tied my hands. We need to amend this constitution so that we can give more power to the presidency. Those are people who are longing for a king, for a monarch, to rule over them and to tell them what to do. Those are subjects. And a lot of us are still subjects. In fact, all of us, I would say, are still subjects to some extent. And we long for the good old days when there was law and order and the president told us what to do and we did it. But unfortunately, democracy is messy. Get used to it. What is the interregnum? Let me just say, before I talk about the interregnum, let me just say that in this continuum between the slave market to colonialism to neo-colonialism to the one-party state, Kenyan people have always risen up. I don't want to go into a lesson of history, but there have always been people who rose up. Mekatilili Wamenza, Wayaki Wahinga, Harry Thuku, all the way to the Kapenguria Six, all the way after independence. You will mention the people who have been rising up. We rise up, we are beaten back down by the people who take over. saying they are our liberators, but become the new masters. We rise up again in the early 90s. We get rid of Section 2A. We are beaten back down by confusion and division by Moi. We rise up again in 1997. We get some form of amendments through IPPG. Again, there is confusion. We rise up again in 2002. We throw out KANU, and we think that we have actually thrown out the old order. NAC comes in. We find out that actually NAC means nothing actually really changed. We keep rising. They keep pushing us down. In 2007, we rose up. They put us down. We lost lives. We lost property. People were displaced. People were maimed. But out of that, the ashes of 2007, we got the new constitution. And I agree with you that, of course, the change must begin here. But in the political economy of Kenya and in the history of Kenya, 2010 was a defining moment. The constitution was a defining moment. It got rid of the imperial presidency and all that it stood for. It brought up devolution of power and resources. It gave us a robust Bill of Rights, some of whose sections we may not necessarily agree with. But it brought in public participation, new institutions that placed the person, the Kenyan people, at the center of decision making, trying to transform us from subjects to citizens. But that did not please everyone. And the people who were mostly displeased by that were the people who benefited from the old world order. And I like to say, if you want to understand the politics of any country, follow the money. So who benefited from the old order? Think about the role of land in Kenya's history. The elite that own land. I'm not going to name names because the names themselves. But the elite that own land, their wealth is in land. Their capital is in land. But the constitution is an existential threat to that elite because of its own direct provisions. But the other threat to that elite is that we are moving as a world globally, we are moving from wealth in land to wealth in our minds. Okay? You've got a 20-year-old boy in jeans and a t-shirt who develops an app and becomes a billionaire overnight. Now that's a threat to people whose wealth is in land. Because whether we like it or not, in 20, 30, 40 years' time, unfortunately, will be where England is right now. I went to school in England. And you've got beautiful cathedrals, you've got huge acreage of land, you've got beautiful castles. Who owns them? What are they worth? Nothing. They are museums. And that's where we are headed with the people who own the land. So what must they do? Please give me 2 extra minutes, Joshua. What must I do if I own all these huge acreages of land in Tigoni or wherever it is that I own land? I must quickly transform that capital into capital that makes sense in the longer term, because that land there makes sense in the longer term. So what do? I add value into that land, I subdivide it, and I get rid of it and change it into money. Or if I'm more foolish, I build a mall, which is going to be empty, and then I start weeping and gnashing teeth. But if I am clever, I add value. Okay? And how do we add value? If Bishop Oginde, if you've got 5,000 acres of land somewhere, for instance. Yes. If you have that land, my bishop, receive. But if you have that land, and you must the clock is ticking, you must get rid of it. What do?
Build the road.
No. Forget about building the road. If you want to subdivide that land, you add value. Yeah. And the number one thing that you need infrastructure, you need particularly water, you need electricity, and so on and so forth. Follow the money. What is the elite doing? And who decides where the infrastructure goes? How do you make that decision if you do not have power? And how do you keep that power if people like Njonjo and other riffraff bonds where are telling you, oh, we must always take you to court when you, decide this road goes there, this water goes there. This constitution is a threat to people who need to move quickly. So, the other reason why this contract is a threat is the way our politics is run. Our politics has become a contractor economy. Not because of contractors who build roads, that's not what I mean, and this is Wachira Maina's analysis. But the people who support the politicians in these very, very expensive elections that cost a minimum of $1 billion, my brother Pete can tell us what it costs. But it costs a lot of money. But basically what happens is that you go to business people or drug dealers, whoever you go to, they get you the money, and then once you get into office, you then give them these tenders to build railways and roads and so on and so forth. It's kickback time, right?
Yeah.
Right. But then that cannot happen if you have a constitution that has strong institutions, because every time you grant a road contract to somebody over there, Okia Omtata goes to court. Okay? So this constitution of 2010 is an existential logic. Its distributive logic is an existential threat to the elite. And their answer has been, slow puncture it as far as you can, but eventually get rid of it. Okay? I will not go into the details about how it's the plan to get rid of it goes. Okay? But when I say the old is dying and the new cannot be born, I want to clarify that for me the old is not Kenyatta and the new is not Raila. Both of them belong to the old order that needs to go. Okay, so let me clarify there before I'm told I'm NASA. I've never met Raila Odinga, I don't know him or his family. Let me talk about number 3 before I wind up. Number 3 is that the new is struggling to be born. The new in Kenya is struggling to be born. First of all, if you think about the demographics of this country, all of us here are old age pensioners. Okay, this country in terms of just how many young people there are, I don't want to go into that. But these are the people who this country, the new, is struggling to be born for. And instead of us trying to give them a stake in this economy, we start a youth fund. We start a business fund. We give them money, knowing very well that statistics show us that 80% of new businesses will collapse. And so they continue to being slaves to us. But the new that I'm talking about, how does it look like? What's the promise of the 2010 Constitution? It places people at the center, as I've said. It strengthens institutions. It addresses marginalization through devolution, the equalization of fund, and so on. But the old order has already hit back against devolution. And it's not through the Council of Governors and so on. The old order has hit against devolution by going and borrowing money recklessly, so that our national debt has increased, quadrupled to 4 trillion plus, when the decisions to go borrow money from China, they are made by who? By the center. The president goes, has drinks with some president, signs loans and comes back. When the loans are being paid, when the loans become due, the first payment from the national revenues is not tithe. It is the loans. Okay? That means that there is less money to go to the counties. So the counties are already being slow punctured by this reckless borrowing. And then these governors and these counties had no say. They did not ask for a railway, they did not ask for this road, they did not ask for this dam or whatever it is. Okay? So basically, and I'm not saying all those things are bad, I'm just saying that we need to follow the logic of what is happening. That as we've cherished devolution, and as we say it is our answer to marginalization, it's already at a fast pace of being so punctured. So let me ask about the picture of now as I wind up, and I know I'm over my time. For you who may be here who thinks that the 2010 Constitution is the worst thing to have happened to this country, I want to ask you to think again. Because I want to take you back 10 years ago to 2007 and ask you a question. If the crisis that we are going through right now had happened in 2007, where would we be? This country would be Rwanda. Forget about people who've been throwing Rwandan names around. But we have this constitution, the fact that it has those institutions, they are still weak and growing. But because of where we are still talking instead of fighting. Okay? So that's the one thing. If there's nothing else about this constitution that you like, that's the one thing that I would like to promote to you. But what is the picture of now? As I wind up. The picture of now is that we have a crisis of institutions as the old order fights back against the new. Okay? And the crisis of institution comprises of the fact that, again, I'm indebted to Wachira Maina for clarifying this to me, that we have the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive. Currently, Jubilee controls the legislature. So that's their home ground. They will want to play their game there. You saw how they went through with the Electoral Law Amendments Act. That's an example of what we will see more and more. The judiciary, because it's for the first time trying to assert its independence and can actually has shown muscles to rule against the state for the first time in a long time, is seen as more friendly towards the opposition. So you'll find NASA going more and more to the judiciary. And Jubilee, conversely, thinks the judiciary is a very hostile space and will do everything to control it. It has already reduced budgets. We have been told judges will fix and we will revisit. Okay? So, let me then say, the executive is also in crisis because it's the one we are struggling, the two sides are struggling to control. Okay? So, our three institutions have a problem. Okay? And if institutions don't work to mediate our conflicts, then we are going to have violence. Not we will have violence. Let me finish by saying, where are we? We have had 2 botched elections in August and in October. Okay? Right now we have a president waiting to be sworn in. He will have although there will be a petition, of course, and those of you who are tired of the instability, please get used to it. There will be a petition from some quarter. So the president, once he's sworn in, he will have legal legitimacy without political legitimacy. The opposition has decided to choose, when you're faced with something you can't deal with, you choose either submission, resistance, or exit. The opposition has chosen to exit. They are saying they are going to form a People's Assembly, which is conceptualized as an alternative, including alternative parliament, alternative constitution-making body, eventually an alternative government. The ultimate exit, of course, is secession. Okay, but I'm not sure. Let me not go into that. So, where we are right now is that this crisis is going to continue. The answer to this crisis, and the church leaders try to give an answer through NCCK, I think they answered a question they were not asked. When you start saying, let's amend this, let's get prime minister, let's etc., it's like telling somebody who has a life-threatening illness on this side of the river that there is medicine across the bridge, across that side, but not showing them the bridge. As church, we must rise up and show people the bridge, even as we think about how to get that medicine. Let me wind up by saying this before I come to Solomon and go. We need this country has 2 choices. We can continue with this crisis of the 2 sides continuing to fight each other, and it's going to be ugly, because if the president has the power to order his military to go kill people, if the president doesn't have full political legitimacy, he has 38%, yet he must rule the country. He does what Moi did: go and make people submit by force of arms. That will be ugly. Okay? And especially because it's not likely that the other side is willing to relent anytime soon. So what do we do as church? We become prophets. And prophets speak their truth though the sky fall. Prophets speak their truth though people walk out. Prophets speak the truth. Of course, leaders will have to bring their people along with them. And eventually we may also be that. But I think it's time to say, look, I come to Solomon. We normally say, oh, Solomon was given a baby. So you tell politicians who are fighting, if you really love Kenya, you will actually leave the baby because you don't want to kill the baby. But let me ask you a question. Suppose the 2 women who came to Solomon, none of them was the mother. Suppose the mother had died in childbirth, and then these 2 women came and claimed to be the mother. And then they did not really care whether this baby was slaughtered. Do you think Solomon would have slaughtered the baby? I don't think so. I think Solomon would have told them, excuse me, you 2, since you can't agree, go away, leave the baby here. I have enough minders who can look after the baby. When you agree, come back. Okay? And this happened with one wise man called Ken Marende once. When PNU and ODM were fighting over who would be the leader of government business, Marende said, I am the leader of government business for the time being, until you can agree. And everyone was scared, thinking, how will he rule? Who will he give? Will he go to work, back to war? Because it was in 2008, things were still quite dicey. So he said, I will be the leader, you go and agree. The church, I'm not saying that the church appoints itself the leader. I'm saying the church goes to Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga and says, you know what? This baby does not belong to either of you. The way you behaved, none of you, because both of you are saying, let's split it into two. Go away. Go away. Get out of State House. Leave it. We want a period within which we can reflect. This country can heal. We can have this conversation that we're going to have, because we can't have it with one of you in power. And then after we have had this conversation and we've talked about those structural issues and so on, you can come back. Or you can go away and get other people. I mean, there are many people who can be president in this country. So I want to end there and say, if you're going to add, shine a light in this crisis instead of more fire, don't sit and do like what the NCC case said, that you go and bring some old rag of what we had in 2006, and this is our solution. I'm saying, let's speak like prophets. Let us say we are not interested in power. I'm not interested in being president, but whoever, I know people who know Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, I tell them this all the time. Go tell your principals, Kenya does not belong to you. The old is dying, the new is being born, whether you like it or not. Thank you.
Wow.